Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we have a real interesting one as we discuss the Grudge of the Anathema Psykana, the Sisters of Silence. General spoiler warning to begin, as we will be discussing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So the Anathema Psykana, more commonly known as the Sisters of Silence, whilst their true origins remain shrouded in no small amount of mystery, these warriors were fighting in the Emperor's name since the earliest days of the Great Crusade. Made up entirely of blanks, a breed of human that has no presence within the warp, their presence disrupts any psychic power, and as such, the Sisters of Silence are an order specialised in taking on the psykers of the enemy. Together with the Emperor's custodies, these women were known as the Talons of the Emperor, and the mere presence of these warriors on the battlefield was a symbol of the Emperor himself. Honestly, to me, the very heresy itself could have well gone very differently had the Imperium not had these warriors within its ranks. And well, with that in mind, it's maybe one of the Imperium's gravest insults, not to mention mistakes, that in the aftermath of the Horus heresy, the Sisters of Silence were all but thrown to the wind. The Emperor was interred upon the Golden Throne, and for the first time since their existence, the Sisters of Silence lost the figurehead to whom they answered. Despite this, still they did not relent. Still they continued their service to his Imperium, fighting in his name across all the war-torn stars. However, while the custodies remained secured within the palace, the Silent Sisterhood, for the most part, were all but forgotten by the Imperium in which they served. And this once proud arm of the Emperor were left in derelict, downtrodden enclaves across the galaxy, a far cry from the custodies' glorious palace. Now, how on earth the Imperium allowed this to transpire? Well, maybe we'll eventually get to see, because to me it beggars belief that these loyal servants were just so easily disregarded. You could even argue that perhaps had the Imperium rightfully made the effort to keep the Anathema Psykana included within its operations as a valued institution, that the Imperium may well not have suffered as many defeats as it did over what would be the next 10,000 years. But as it is, and as it was, the Psykana were all but cast aside, and as a result, an indelible grudge was carved. Now thankfully we have had glimpses of this and the Psykana within the lore over the years. A few but precious glimpses, the most prominent to me being within the Beast Rises saga, a time when the Imperium was brought to its very knees by the Xeno menace of the Orcs, a war so powerful it led to the Throne World's very doorstep. So desperate were the forces of the Imperium, not only had they elected a new Lord Commander for the first time since Guilliman's death, not only did they see the creation of the Death Watch, a force that would go on to become a backbone of the Imperium's defences, but they would also approach the forgotten and disregarded Sisters of Silence. Now those events transpire in the Watchers in Death novel of the Beast Arises saga, and if you haven't checked it out then I do recommend it, but I really recommend reading the saga in all its entirety. And obviously it's just a single enclave of the Order, as they had very much become broken and scattered across all the Imperium. And here the Imperium's representative, a High Lord of Terror no less, appeals to the sisters for their aid, beseeching them to come to the Imperium's aid in the name of, well, every soul within its borders. However, if they were expecting the Silent Sisterhood to simply come running back, well, they were sorely mistaken. And their answer was simple. It wasn't a no in a single word, but it was a reflection of the Imperium's own making. And that in itself tells you more about the fate of the Anathema Psykana, well, than anything else. They don't say no. They say the Imperium made it clear a long time ago that their help was not wanted. It's no doubt the same form of answer they would have received from any enclave or force of the sisters across the galaxy. And man, does it cut right to the heart of it. Is it a bitter one? Of course. The scars of being so disregarded by the Imperium that they had served were embedded within them. You can't imagine how much it would hurt to give your life in service, to dedicate your existence to an emperor, his Imperium, only to then see that Imperium so easily cast you aside, when it simply didn't need you anymore. And well, here they are, after centuries, coming again, not in apology, not in sorrow, but because they now need you again. I mean, I think I know how I would react, and I don't blame the Sisterhood for answering that way either. These aren't the genetically engineered space marines we're talking about, ones who were made to serve. These warriors had vowed to serve. And that's what's particularly interesting here, because as their conversation moves forward, it becomes clear as far as they're concerned, they've never broken that vow. They made their oaths to the Emperor of Mankind, to the Imperium that he created. To them, that Imperium doesn't exist anymore. The Imperium as it is now, the Imperium as it had become, was not his Imperium. Well, for an order called the Sisters of Silence, they actually talk a lot of sense. The Emperor's Imperium probably did die the moment he was interred upon the Golden Throne. Honestly, it may well have never been able to recover from the moment of Horus's betrayal. But that's something we'll never know. What we do know is the Imperial truth was gone. The guiding light of his leadership was gone. And over the passage of time, so too the leadership and might of the Primarchs too was gone. The fall to corruption that followed was simply a matter of time. It's a really good question to ask. Is the Imperium still the Emperor's Imperium? For all the cry of this galaxy belongs to the Emperor, is this Imperium one he would still be proud of? One he would call his own? Unfortunately, I think the Sisters of Silence may be closer to the truth. Now, in this particular situation, the sisters are won over by the mention of Vulcan, still standing true in the name of the Imperium, despite his disgust for what it had become. And that strikes a chord with the Sisterhood, who you would believe in Vulcan, they can see a symbol of what the Imperium was. And ultimately, along with this, the obvious danger to the Golden Throne itself. For if this corrupted carcass of the Emperor's dream were to fall, then obviously it would mean the death of the Emperor himself. And that's what I love about the Sisters of Silence. For all of their mistreatment, for their disgust at what the Imperium has become, for me the very rightness of their argument, they still stay true to the Emperor, for what he stood for. You really have to give them their respect for that. Now of course ultimately we know the Anathema Psykana would be officially recalled and re-established with the return of Rabute Guilliman. However, the truth was that it actually began with Trajan Valoris, the Captain General of the Custodes. He began trying to recall the Sisterhood before Guilliman even returned, sending out communications across the Imperium for his daughters to come home. And if you want to read about those events, then I really recommend the Watchers of the Throne novel, The Emperor's Legion. And this one is by Chris Raitt, and I've spoken about it quite a bit before on the channel. It's an absolutely brilliant read, it really is. And like I said, this communication was real simple. The Emperor calling his daughters home. And it's just something that gives you chills just thinking about. Simple words, but with so much meaning. Like a return to what the Imperium was supposed to be. His Imperium. And that this was it trying to right the wrongs of its past. However, even with that, those emotional scars of the past can't simply be wiped away with a call to return home. And we got to see how surprisingly that past and emotion comes out, even against the Custodes themselves. Through the eyes of one of the Anathema Psykana, named Aaliyah, we got to see the simmering hatred and jealousy that she just couldn't help feel whenever she laid eyes on the Custodes. Let's not forget the Custodes were not alone in being in the talons of the Emperor. The Anathema Psykana were right there by their side. Battle for battle, world for world. And while the Sisters of Silence were cast aside like no longer needed scraps, the Custodes remained within the glorious Imperial Palace, within the presence of his light. While the Sisters scrapped for survival, leading their lives as pariahs and outcasts, the Custodes had their golden armour and privilege upon the throne world itself. If I was to think about it, I think I'd honestly have to say the Custodes were just as responsible as the High Lords for the loss of the Silent Sisterhood. They could have surely done something to keep the order present, to keep their place by the Emperor's side. The Captain General of the Custodes does have a place within the High Lords of Terror. His voice would surely have counted for something. If they had brought the Sisterhood back within the walls of the palace, then surely no one would have opposed it. While the answers we seek may be yet to come, it certainly appears that they did nothing but stand idly by, while their comrades, their sisters in arms, their fellow servants in the Emperor's name, were disregarded like a no longer needed weapon. For all my love of the Custodes, I absolutely think that they must share a portion of the blame. And even if not, I can absolutely understand why some of the Sisterhood would feel such a burning resentment. They were no less loyal. They gave no less effort. They spent no less of their lives in blood. And yet while they were cast aside, the Custodes remained in their golden luxury. How would that not hurt? Again, to me, the Silent Sisterhood can only be right to feel so aggrieved by the Imperium and by their comrades the Custodes. As it is now, the Anathema Psykana are once more in formal service of their Emperor, Rabute Guilliman formally reinstalling the Order to service in the Emperor's name. The need for them and their talents greater now than it's ever been. There is no doubt about it. But while they may have been brought back in from the darkness, that doesn't necessarily fix the scars of their past. And to me, the Imperium should be very, very thankful that the Anathema Psykana never forgot their oaths to the Emperor. And while his dream may well have fallen, they give their all once more to restore his Imperium. But as always guys, what do you think? Why do you think the Sisters of Silence were in truth so easily cast aside? How could the High Lords of Terror, the Imperium, really view them as no longer needed? Are the Anathema Psykana right to feel such a grudge against the Imperium they so loyally served? And like me, do you feel the Custodes deserve to feel some of that resentment? Should they have done more to help prevent the Sisters becoming such outcasts? As always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. But with that said, I am off and I'll see you all again real soon.